Thank you, Brother Gerald, and thank you to Brother Kendrick, Brother Scotty, and those who are yet to work in our service on this day. Extend a good morning to those who are joining us in this worship experience from across this great country. And we hope, trust, and pray that something might be said to benefit you and to minister to your spirit as we continue this sojourn that we call life. I want to invite your attention to the book of Proverbs as well as the book of James. These are two complementary scriptures that will go well to help us in laying out the purpose and plans of this message. So again, we're going to look in the book of Proverbs, in particular Proverbs chapter 27, and verse number 1. And then we will direct our attention to the letter of James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15. Again, Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 1, James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15. In Proverbs 27 and verse 1, we read, "Boast not thyself of tomorrow, for thou knowest not what a day may bring forth." This sentiment is echoed and expounded upon by James in James chapter 4, beginning with verse 13. "Go to now, ye that say, today or tomorrow we will go into such a city and continue there a year and buy and sell and get gain. Whereas you know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little time and then vanishes away. For that you ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that." The message for this morning from Proverbs 27, verse 1, and James chapter 4, verses 13 through 15. Live for today, prepare for tomorrow, and keep the end in mind. Live for today, prepare for tomorrow, and keep the end in mind. I wish a very special Mother's Day to all who are now listening, including my very own mother and grandmother and aunts, ladies who have displayed tremendous strength and character. Of course, my acknowledgments would not be complete without giving honor to my beloved wife, who's an excellent wife and mother. Many assemble on this day in hopes of hearing a traditional Mother's Day message. That will not be the case today, as the Spirit leads me in a different direction. Over the course of the last few weeks, but especially in the last few days, many of you have called or texted me about matters of great concern in your personal lives. The coronavirus continues to wreak havoc around the world. And it seems all of us know someone personally who's been impacted by this disease. not to mention the other ailments our loved ones struggle to overcome. Lately, there have been mentions of individuals tragically killed in accidents, and more horrifying, those who have lost loved ones due to senseless violence. Some of you may face the prospects of financial hardships as a result of the downturn in the economy, whereas others struggle to return to work even though no vaccine or cures have been developed. The greatest concern that continues to be echoed from those listening to our nightly calls is that of children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who stand in a distant relationship with the Lord. At a time where mankind should draw closer to the creator of this universe and sustainer of our existence, some, especially among many of our young people, continue to be estranged from the fellowship the Lord offers. With these concerns and others, I began to question the wisdom in preaching a flowery Mother's Day message when the hearts and spirits of God's people need soothing from the agonizing hurts of life. And I suspect that each of us will find a sufficient means to express our love to our matriarchs. Nevertheless, the need for the present time is to offer some biblical insight that will speak to our concerns and to offer divine wisdom that will minister to our anxious spirits. The two texts mentioned today offer a perspective, and a right one at that, about both life's uncertainty and brevity. One would have to assume a posture of sheer arrogance to make the assumption that tomorrow is guaranteed. While life has never held a promise about tomorrow, or what one might be able to control or experience, it is only recently that many of us have come to recognize this truth. Subconsciously, we naturally make assumptions about our time here. In fact, most, if not all, go through the day without a second thought as to what may lie ahead, until death or the thought of death boldly confronts us. Our lives are lived with the expectation of seeing another day. And so it is we go about making plans and fathoming in our minds what it is we're going to do tomorrow, next week, next month, or next year. It is for this reason that the current world crises will accomplish, if nothing else, a sense of awakening, perhaps even fear, about life and just how long we will live. We know now, if never before, that we just don't know how much time we have. And that awakening need not produce a paralyzing fear or a heightened alarm. Instead, it should lead us to the understanding that both Solomon and James have long ago said about our lives that we can have no certainties about the length of our years. There are no certainties, no promises, and no man controls how many days he will see. We can, to a large degree, control how well we live. That is, it is not in our power to know our end or to guarantee another day. But it is in our power to live life today to its fullest. We have the power to make choices about our own lives, if we would stop getting into other folks' business and spend some time thinking through the choices of today. We have the power to understand our purpose, to find fulfillment, and to value our temporary time here. Within us, we hold the power to give our limited time to shallow people. It's within our power to give that time to infantile matters and to waste that limited time by indulging in negative undertakings. Or we can access that same power by choosing to rise above shallow people, choosing this day to set our sights on meaningful concerns. It is wise in this day for each of us who now understand more than ever before that tomorrow is not promised, that you and I must aim to be this day the very best we can be and to live the very best life we can live. For these reasons, I would ask you to think of doing 3 things that will radically improve your life and help to reduce anxiety. Number 1, live for today. Number 2, prepare for tomorrow. And number 3, keep the end in mind. To deal with this idea of living for today, again, both Proverbs and James state in no uncertain terms that no one's guaranteed to see tomorrow. Neither you, I, or those we love can be sure that tomorrow will ever come. That makes today all the more important because it's all that any of us have. If today is truly all that you have and all that I have, how will this day be used? To what will we lend our time, our attention, and our energy? You see, one of the reasons why thoughts of death produce a certain anxiousness and agonizing feeling to us is because death causes us to reflect on our lives and think about how much time we've wasted. When confronted with the reality of death, we start to think about how much more there is we can do, how much more potential we have, how many more things we can explore, how much more there is to learn, how much more there is to enjoy. And sometimes we have to be confronted with this inevitable reality for us to start to make better uses of the time that we have. And I want you to think about it and be honest with yourself. So much time is wasted on insufficient things. Insignificant things take up so much of our time. And they are insufficient and insignificant because they are insufficient to supply us with fulfillment and insignificant in the greater scheme of things. Can we afford to waste time on conversations that are going nowhere? Can we afford to indulge in that which will not prove fruitful? Can we really afford to give time to matters that are trivial in nature? So much attention is given to things and people that drain us. Should we allow such things and such people to take away from our divine purpose and our divine plan? So much energy is spent on nonsense, energy spent on anger, energy spent on grudges, energy spent on seeking revenge, energy spent on soaking in emotions, and Lord have mercy, energy spent griping and complaining. The Bible clearly teaches us to do all things without murmurings and disputings. We read that in Philippians chapter 2 and verse 14. And yet we spend so much energy murmuring about life and complaining and arguing and fussing and fighting. And again, the question is that the best use of our energy? I would suggest that if you want to make the best use of time, if your attention should be directed at anything noteworthy, if energy should be reserved for anything, let it be for living for today, with the understanding that today is all that we have. We must make up in our minds that I am going to live today. Think about, for example, Paul in Philippians 1 and verse 21. He says, "For me to live is Christ." He understood his course, his path in this life, and he determined that he would not indulge in those things that are not fruitful, that he would not waste his time in insignificant and insufficient matters. He would not dispense his energy on anger, even when people forsook Paul like Demas, even when people like Alexander the coppersmith did him wrong. He determined within himself that I can't give time to Demas. I can't waste my energy. I cannot give attention to Alexander the coppersmith because I want to live for Christ. Therefore, for me to live is Christ. For me to live is Christ, meaning that I have to give my time, my attention, and my energy to serving the God who by grace and mercy allowed me this day. Sometimes I wonder if God would extend our days if we did better with the days he already gave us. If we could be better stewards of our time and our attention and our energy, God may see value in extending those days. And that is not just a preacher's hypothesis or a preacher's thought. It is rooted in the scriptures. Jesus gives an analogy about a tree that is not fruitful. And he says in that parable, that analogy about the tree, that the time would come in which it was determined to pluck that tree from the ground, uproot that tree. The question was raised, why is that tree cumbering the ground? And it was said that mercy intervened, and man said, give me another year, and if it bears fruit, well, if not, then cut it down. I want to tell you, there comes a time where we may need to examine ourselves and say, is God saying this is your last year because I didn't get anything out of you last year and you're just wasting good ground. You're just occupying space. You're just sucking up good air. Or does God look at us and say, I'm happy with the use of your time. I'm happy with where your attention has been given. I'm happy with how you use your energy. And so I'm going to extend your time and allow you just a little longer, because you've determined, like Paul, that to you to live is Christ, and you've given yourself to God in such a way to produce such fruitfulness that God does not mind giving you just a little bit more. Let me say, in regards to not only the God that we serve, but to those that we love, enjoy your loved ones today. I have done more funerals than I can count. I have been at the scene of suicides. I've been there after tragic car accidents. I have seen individuals who were being released from hospitals, sitting on the side of a bed and drop dead when the doctors have given the all clear. I've seen people who suffer through debilitating illnesses for years. And I have seen instances of individuals who walked as if there was not a care in their life, only to lose their life to sudden illnesses, accidents, or other tragedies. And I'm often intrigued at tears at funerals. And I'm not insensitive to the amount of grief that one experiences over the loss of a loved one. But I often wonder if grief is not compounded by guilt. Sometimes folks wonder how much more they could have done with that individual, how many more hugs, how many more I love yous could have been given. And so I want to suggest to you to be careful, not to allow busy schedules to keep you from connecting to those people who are the objects of your affection. If you understand what it means to live for today, today is the day to hug. Today is the day to love. Today is the day to embrace. Because as Solomon said in Proverbs, as James says, we don't know if we have tomorrow. Be careful to not allow offenses to lead to grudges and failures to reconcile those relationships so that you can enjoy your loved ones and they can enjoy you. And be diligent to serve others, to express love, and to show appreciation. Many times we think about what someone can do for us, and we don't give enough thought to how we can serve someone else, how we can better love them and show appreciation. I want you, in talking about living for today, to develop 3 thoughts on living today. Number 1, make a choice each day that this will be the best day of your life. You have to make the choice that this day is going to be the best day of your life. Now, I've been preaching long enough to know that we have cynics. We have people who may conclude that to be nothing more than feel-good philosophy. Because somebody's going to say, well, Brother Gibbs, you don't know about my life and what I deal with. Well, let me give you the second principle of living for today. Not only do you make a choice that this day will be the best day of your life, but I want to help you when you have some issues in your life. Make a choice that pain, problems, and problem people can only be handled by the provision of God's grace. Yes, we want every day to be the best day of our lives. But sometimes you just got to ask God for the grace to deal with what you can't deal with. Because pain is sure to come, problems are sure to surface, and problem people know how to find you. But that doesn't mean you can't still have a great day. That just means that you need God's grace. Yet still someone else is going to say, well, Brother Preacher, even yet with having this mantra to make each day the best day and asking God's grace for pain and problems and problem people, what happens when I fall? What happens when I experience fault? What happens when I fail? Well, make a choice that each fall, each fault, and each failure will not be fatal. But each fall, each fault, and each failure will be fertilizer to fruitfulness. See, many times when we fall, when we have faults, when we fail, we like to sulk, we like to whine, we like to get in our feelings. That's a time to say, how can I use my fall? How can I use my fault? How can I use my failure to help me to grow, to help me beyond this day? How can I better position myself instead of whining and complaining and sulking? Maybe I need to take a lesson from my fall and learn from my faults and learn from my failures so that I can position myself to be a better person as a result of the fall, the fault, or the failure. And not only can I be a better person, but then I can minister to somebody else. Live for today. But not only should you live for today, you need to prepare for tomorrow. Now, living for today does not mean to do so irresponsibly. It's not a license to ignore the need for preparation. It's not a license to ignore forethought or failing to position oneself for success. Success does not happen by happenstance. It happens by those who intentionally prepare themselves to achieve it. Irresponsible people always suffer the consequences of irresponsibility. And instead of taking ownership for their choices, they blame everybody. It's always somebody else's fault. Their life is miserable because of what somebody else did or didn't do. They can never be happy because somebody didn't give them something. Somebody didn't love them. Somebody didn't offer them something. Their job mistreated them. Their family played favoritism. It's always somebody else's fault. They don't save money. They don't plan for retirement. They do not anticipate the consequences of their actions. They live with impulsiveness. They are reactionary. They put emphasis on immediate gratification, not understanding that to be impulsive and reactionary, to focus simply on immediate gratification with no sensible thought for tomorrow, it does not allow them to apply reason. It's a betrayal to their sense of logic, to their application of critical thinking skills. Certainly, we just concluded that we ought to live for today. Living for today is not an excuse, and it is not a rationalization or a justification for not thinking and at least preparing for tomorrow. Well, we may not be guaranteed tomorrow, but if you make no preparations for tomorrow, what happens if tomorrow should get here? Then you're not ready for it. And so you're always living your life in a deficit because you've never given yourself time to plan for tomorrow. Even ants got more sense than that. In Proverbs chapter 6, people ought to have some ant sense. In Proverbs chapter 6, the wise man said, beginning in verse 6, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard." The word sluggard means lazy. "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider her ways and be wise, which having no guide, overseer, or ruler, provideth her meat in the summer, and gathereth her food in the harvest. How long wilt thou sleep, O sluggard? When wilt thou arise out of thy sleep? Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep. So shall thy poverty come as one that travaileth, and thy want as an armed man." The Bible is telling us here from the mind of the wise man that we ought to have as much sense as an ant to anticipate that we have to work for and prepare for that which is coming. We have to anticipate tomorrow. We're not promised tomorrow. We cannot arrogantly or foolishly think that tomorrow is guaranteed. At the same time, wisdom dictates that you ought to anticipate what will be on tomorrow and apply the sense of an ant and prepare yourself today so that tomorrow you may have a chance at survival. You may have a chance at prosperity. You may have a chance at success. Proverbs chapter 20. There again, the wise man speaks. Says in verse number 4, the sluggard will not plow by reason of the cold. Therefore shall he beg and harvest and have nothing. In other words, what the Bible is teaching is that in Proverbs 20 and verse number 4, some people have every excuse in the world why they won't prepare, why they won't save, why they won't invest, why they won't plan, and why they won't use critical thinking skills to anticipate a better outcome in their life. They live by whatever happens, but then they get mad that whatever happened. In order to be effective and successful in life, you've got to plan, you've got to sacrifice, you've got to save, you've got to prepare, you've got to anticipate, you've got to position yourself so that if the Lord should see fit to give you tomorrow, that what you've done today will help make tomorrow a little less stressful. The question we need to ask is, how will my choices today affect my happiness tomorrow? What reactions will come as a result of my actions? What can I do to prepare myself for a better tomorrow by doing something today? And then the question that I always like to ask is, am I willing to delay gratification? Sometimes we are in such a hurry to be happy today that we sacrifice tomorrow, and we do what we do with credit cards. We borrow today and pay for it tomorrow. And sometimes in wanting so much happiness today, we borrow from our future. And when the future comes, and instead of enjoying it, we're still paying for the happiness I wanted yesterday. Brian Tracy says the ability to discipline yourself to delay gratification in the short term in order to enjoy greater rewards in the long term is the indispensable prerequisite for success. Let me read that again. The ability to discipline yourself. See, it takes discipline to not focus on getting everything today at the cost of tomorrow. The ability to discipline yourself to delay gratification in the short term in order to enjoy greater rewards in the long term is the indispensable prerequisite for success. Charles F. Glassman, a great author, said it this way: self-discipline is often disguised as short-term pain, but it leads to long-term gains. The mistake many of us make is the need and want for short-term gains, that is, immediate gratification, but it often leads to long-term pain. Though we are not guaranteed tomorrow, and yes, we should live for today, we need to prepare for tomorrow and not set ourselves up for future unhappiness, future stress, future anxiety, because we did nothing today to prepare for tomorrow. Why do you ask God for tomorrow, supposedly asking in faith, but then you don't make choices today as if tomorrow is going to come? If you ask God to bless you, to live longer, to have another day, you need to ask yourself, do I believe in my prayer? And do I believe to the extent that I'm going to prepare for that tomorrow by making choices today that position me for tomorrow? That's like asking God to fill your cup, but then you don't bring a cup for him to fill. If you have confidence that God will extend your days and that God has more to get out of you, you need to make preparations today so that tomorrow is not a burden. And then last, not only do you live for today and prepare for tomorrow, but keep the end in mind. One of two things are going to happen. Either the Lord will return or we're going to die. Guaranteed, one of those two things is going to happen. Now, the Bible teaches in Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed unto man once to die. And that's an appointment we all gonna keep. Now, when we have appointments, we usually get reminders. Doctors, dentist office, and others with whom we do business often send us reminders. We might get a postcard in the mail, a text message reminder, a recorded voicemail, an email. But they remind us that we have an appointment they expect us to keep. And in like manner, we need to be reminded that we have an appointment with answering to our God. And so if we're going to live for today and prepare for tomorrow, wisdom would find us anticipating that whatever I do today, whatever I say, however I spend my time, however I direct my attention, however I spend my energy, I'm going to have to answer to God. In my preparation for tomorrow, I need to not only be thinking of preparing by saving, by retirement, investments, and by planning, and by not being impulsive and reactionary and not focusing on immediate gratification. I need to also be preparing to stand before God. I need to be preparing to have to give an account and be ready to meet the Lord at all times. Now, one of the reasons that people have anxiety about dying, it's not that they don't know that they're going to die at some point. The problem is folk are not ready to die. And I have determined that you are not fit to live until you're ready to die. Until you are ready to die, you're not fit to live. Because being ready to die and being fit to live go hand in hand. If you don't believe that, read again Philippians chapter 1 and verses 21 and 22, and how Paul says, "For to me to live is Christ, and to die is gain." He is saying that both go hand in hand. I live for Christ, and I die to Christ, and I gain Christ in death. And so I'm living, I'm dying, whatever the scenario is all about God. And if you're not living for God, you ain't living. And if you're not dying ready to experience and expect an encounter with God for eternity, what are you living for? Let me close with this thought from Matthew chapter 25. You remember the story of the 10 virgins in Matthew chapter 25. And the Bible there tells the story in verses 1 through 13. The story about 5 wise virgins and 5 who were foolish. And in short, the 5 wise virgins had oil in their vessels with their lamps. And they prepared themselves for the bridegroom. But the 5 foolish were those who slept and slumbered. And at the appointed time, those who were foolish spent their time, according to verse 8, trying to get what somebody else has, saying, "Give us some of your oil." because our lamps have gone out. And that's the problem with people who don't live for today and prepare for tomorrow and keep the end in mind. They always want what somebody else has. And here's something I've learned about blessings. What God has given somebody else won't work for you. Because blessings are custom made. They are tailored to the individual. And those who were wise prepared themselves, and they didn't have any to share. And if we would be wise in this life, we would prepare ourselves by having ourselves ready to meet the Lord, because we don't know when death will come knocking, and we don't know when the Lord might return. Now, to those outside of the body of Christ, that's disturbing, it's unsettling, it's not peace producing. But to those who know the Lord, it is a reminder that heaven is awaiting all of us, and death is not a problem for those who die in the Lord, because death is only a transition from life to eternity. Death is a transition from labor to reward. And you can live a number of years. It doesn't mean that there was inequality in your life. The Bible talks about Methuselah having lived some, I believe, 969 some years, if I'm correct on the number. And all the Bible tells us is that Methuselah lived and he died. What really matters is to live for today, prepare for tomorrow, and keep the end in mind. I hope that this has offered a blessing to you in the anxious and agonizing experiences of our lives, that we might understand that tomorrow is not promised. It is arrogant to just make the assumption that I'm going to wake up tomorrow. But life has meaning, less anxiety and less stress when I determine I'm going to live for today, I'm going to prepare for tomorrow, and keep the end in mind. May God bless you and may God keep you, as Brother Gerald now comes to offer us a song of encouragement, followed by Brother Kevin Green, who will offer prayer requests.